I want to comment on something on the miners, and basically, maybe a little more general, but I'm not going to give specific information out, but maybe a little more detail than you might get from other people, though, in some respects, as far as the principles go. What's involved? And what's involved when a company abandons a project, and it's a very serious decision. Now, I know there's been a lot of accusations out there about, well, the bullion dealers are just pumping metals and they're just dumping stuff on us that's garbage. Some people saying that. It ripped me off. People don't, and I'm going to say this right now, that's not a fact. And actually, if there is somebody doing a ripping off, it is actually for the manipulation in the actual spot markets. I always show a link of proof of spot market rigging in the oil market, but it pertains to all the markets. I always put that down in the information box, and also have a lot of, you may call them a little bit of a conspiracy, but they're not conspiracy, because I don't delve into conspiracies. When something doesn't jive, there's something wrong there. And actually, the people that are bringing up this lawsuit against the manipulation of the oil market for the last 10 years, you're also bringing it up. It's in all commodities, all silver, gold, agriculture, you name it. That is one reason. That is one reason. Before I get into this, I suspect that they will manipulate the price up, bring it down, and manipulate it up before it actually goes to the final bubble. Why manipulate it in one direction? Because they can make money on the way down and the way up, right? I mean, that's just my thinking. If I was in control, I know I have a limitation on how much I can manipulate a market. So why not manipulate it up and down? If you're a true insider, that's the way you're going to really rate. That's the way the casino is really going to win, right? But the casino doesn't win when you buy physical. I know there's been a lot of criticism from people, and actually these are armchair garbage too, because, they're bloggers, they sit back on a computer all day and they post videos, that they don't even create themselves, Like maybe I'm posting a video, but it's from my research and experience. And actually, even though I don't have extensive, well, I have a little bit of experience in some, I don't want to delve too much into this, but actually I have a little bit of experience in the mining industry on some large projects that were trying to be started in the United States. And my experience is mainly in the construction industry, but this industry is very similar in a lot of ways. It takes a lot of upfront years of planning and capitalization of all these expenditures before it even gets started. You don't even get $1 till years down the road. You think a bank's going to give you money for something like that unless you really know what you're doing? Now, I'm going to point out there's a lot of miners going upside down that are abandoning projects. Now, when they actually started these projects, you got to remember these are experts in the industry. These aren't some pumpers. They threw their own money and lives on the line, basically. Their livelihoods, their money, all their efforts. And they sometimes, I don't know what if they signed personally on some of these loans too. You never know. They could be different size miners. In the case of Barrick Gold, nobody signed it personally on loans, but there could be a lot of startups, small ventures. People that could have been doing this all their lives. Their family could have been doing it all their lives. So, if they expected the price to go up because of all these fundamentals, and it's not going up, what's going on? But it's the age-old game. Wall Street does this with the farmers too. Actually, this whole spot market started with the farmers, right? With the the options and the futures contracts and everything like that. It started with the farmers, and you know who they try to screw, right? People actually work for a living. Now, I don't really dislike people who are more armchair, because there's a limit. You need it up to a point, but there's a lot of people out there armchairing, saying that these people are all trying to rip you off. They're not. That's not true, because they ripped themselves off, basically. They freaking put 20 years into something and they got screwed. They got screwed. But what did they get? Why did it happen? Why did it go upside down? Why is the price that low when, supposedly the economy is that good? Now I'm going to put down a couple big examples. Kinross. It's one of the it's a Canadian mining giant. They've abandoned a project for worth about $1.3 billion in Ecuador. Abandoned. What abandoned means is you're going to write down all those costs. Write down means you're going to take all the capitalization. You see, this is the problem even too with mining. You need a lot of loan money. Because if you buy equipment, that's not a tax write-off. Well, maybe they might let you do it Section 179. I don't know what they're going to do in a mining company, but you're going to depreciate it over so many years. It's not an instant write-off. You're capitalizing engineering, your geothermal engineering, roads, buildings, and stuff you have to do for like plants that produce electricity in the area, because this area isn't accessible to enough electricity. You have to bring in all kinds of infrastructure. Either it could be electrical lines, but you have to pay for all that. And when you pay for all that, that's all capitalized. In other words, capitalized, it shows up as there's no expense. In other words, you're spending all this money up front for something you might get years down the line, and all that money you're spending up front, practically all of it, the vast majority of it, none of it's a tax write-off in the beginning. None of it. Zero. It's all capitalized. It gets depreciated after a period of time, but that's it. So they need mega loans from a bank. Now, you think a bank is going to give these people money, a miner money, if they do not expect the price of gold and silver to go up or this project to be feasible? So, there goes the whole freaking argument as to, oh, these are the pumpers. Oh, really? You mean the bank had it wrong? All these experts had it wrong? Oh, yeah, just the pumpers. You know what's going on? It's actually the Wall Street manipulators. It really is. It really, really is. Armchair bloggers, go to hell. That's what I got to say to that shit, because they don't know anything about this industry at all. I know a little bit about it, but I know a lot about the construction industry, and it's very similar. I don't want to ad-lib too much on here because it's maybe it's juicy tidbits, but I don't want the wrong people to see what I'm going to say. But there was actually projects in I'm not even going to say the state, but it was major big projects in the Southwest in the United States that were being attempted to be started, and a lot of the banks wouldn't bite. So there was contacts up in New York City, even though I'm down in Florida, and there were some people from Israel they were trying to get to invest in this, and there were Jewish up in New York and stuff too. But they didn't bite, and I'm kind of glad they didn't bite, because they would have got slammed. They would have been upside down. They would have got screwed. Maybe not in the long run, but in the short run, as to what happened from a couple years ago, they would have got screwed. They would have got screwed. So I'm glad they didn't bite. But I am quite familiar with some of this stuff. This was like mining equipment, over $100 million, construction of nursery arena, because, like, for instance, in the United States, you got a lot of EPA and environmental problems where if you're tearing up the ground, you got to replace it with something. And you see, these studies, when they do these studies, these environmental studies, they have a shelf life. In other words, if we're planning on freaking doing this and getting this much out of the ground at this time, and we have to do these impact studies, environmental studies, engineering studies, geothermal studies, they have a shelf life. In other words, you got to get it going, man. You got to get her done, as they say. You got to get her done, or else all these studies become worthless. I don't care if you poured millions into them. It's a hunk of paper. Doesn't mean a damn thing. You're still going to have to pay somebody else to redo all these studies again. And, the other thing is labor. During an economic boom, even in construction, this is where some of the construction costs went up a lot, is because there was a shortage of subcontractors. And that's the same thing with miners. You see, mining has to go in a high gear all of a sudden. Even if you could start up the project, do you have enough skilled people that know what they're doing? No, because you know what happens? You know, these people say they're in the mining industry collapses. What happens? They go into another industry. All of a sudden, they're going to some other area that's maybe similar. Maybe they're an electrical contractor or something like that. Maybe they were doing something with the electrical infrastructure on a mining project, but now they're an independent contractor, correct? And then, you know, what is the mine going to do? You're trying to find people that are skilled. They're going to have a hard time. See, actually, this is where Wall Street shoots themselves in the foot. Because these guys look at the numbers all day. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know shit. See, I keep one foot, I'm mainly in accounting finance, but I keep one foot in the how-to redneck stuff. Because actually, I know a lot of hands-on stuff with a lot of different things. So I have an understanding of what's going on in this. That's probably why I fit into this. But I know my numbers, man. I know advanced Excel, advanced accounting, and advanced databases, and I can actually tap. I've done many specialized reports tapping into the most complex construction software out there. It actually was into a master builder, tapping into it directly using advanced access to make specialized reports that even that thing couldn't make, even with its report writer. There's a lot of stuff I know, but man, I can get out there and build something too. That's the difference between me and these desk jockeys I sometimes hate. But anyway, they're not all bad. But, you know, the thing is, when you got people on the internet commenting about this or whatever, they don't know jack shit about it. That's what the reality of it is. You know, there's people saying, oh, you got ripped off. Oh, it's going to the moon. You know, that's the other side of the coin. Because a commodity, well, there's an adjustment period. It can actually spike really high. But if a commodity gets way overpriced, they find alternatives. It's called demand destruction. It's an age-old principle. But the other big one out there is Barrick Gold. They suspended their $8.5 billion development in the Andes Mountains of a gold mining project on the Chile-Argentine border. It's done. It's done. So they're doing a lot of asset write-downs. So now asset write-downs means when they capitalized all these expenses, in other words, they're just going to say, we abandoned this portion of the project. They're probably doing it piecemeal. They're probably not saying the whole project at once. It probably wasn't a big one-time decision. It's in pieces. So they're saying this section is abandoned. In a project, you know, in construction, the project has to be considered abandoned for at least 6 months before they can deem it abandoned. And they will look at that. That means there's no activity going on it in 6 months. You know, in the construction industry, some of the biggest projects out there that were abandoned were, you know, abandoned maybe for a year or two. And a lot of this actually has to do with money. You know, it's not that they lack the expertise on how to even get the gold out of the ground at cheap prices or get the project done in construction cheaply and efficiently and have a market. It's that the bank could squeeze them, because there was actually a crisis in the banking industry. Now, if you're connected with the Obama administration or something like that, you probably get all the money you want. That's another thing. You could be a total screw-up and get all the money you want. That's another thing. See, actually, people, you know, I don't want to comment too much on this stuff, but I'll give you some generalizations. Like, if you have an inside track on loans, now I'm talking major stuff. I'm not talking somebody, you know, a little bit. But if you have an inside track with the, you know, the Russian guy or something, actually he was the Russian heritage from the UK, but I ain't gonna say who he was, but he's dead now. But he's, you know, you get a loan, and you actually always have this line called contingency, and you know the contingency might be 8 to 10%. But your outlook for your entire profit might be 8 to 10%. But you know, when you draw on contingency, you know, it's a subjective thing. You could draw out your whole project's profit before the realization and completion of the project. So you could draw out, and as long as you're not personally liable for this stuff, and actually you're protected through LLCs and stuff, you could draw out if you're the head guy on this project, you could draw out all your contingencies ahead of time. I'm telling you some really wild shit here, man. Stuff that even accountants, they might know. They might say, oh yeah, we know about it, and then I don't know. You could draw out your whole contingency fund ahead of time. And if the project goes belly up, the guy at the top that drew out the contingency fund for administrative expenses and salaries and everything else and perks and whatever else he needs, he already got his money. And everything else goes belly up and goodbye. And then there's the big tax write-off at the end, right? I don't want to comment too much on this because, you know, I'm being very general about things, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on. Anyway, so Barrick Gold poured. I'm not talking about Barrick Gold when I'm talking about this contingency fund. I'm talking about something else and maybe something else that goes on in general. But there are inside tracks to funding. Barrick Gold poured about $5 billion into, and they expected to get into this area, and they expected to get 800 to 850,000 ounces of gold a year for the first 5 years, right? Full production. Didn't happen because of the price. And see, the other thing is, the gold and silver and the copper and all that type of stuff we're getting now is actually off of existing mines. Stuff that isn't being, they're not capitalizing into new ventures. It's off the operating expenses, the bare bones operating expenses. And, you know, you're talking like, what's operating expenses? Payroll, right? Payroll for the people who are actually doing the mining, right? Fuel, diesel fuel. Diesel fuel actually is about 50% of the operating expenses when you're going into full production. Highly energy intensive environment. They even have, on the large projects, they'll have biodiesel plants on the project where they'll all make their own biodiesel. It's still almost 50%. It's still almost 50% of the operating budget. So, you know, you're not talking about, you know, that's existing mine. So when that stuff starts whittling down, the supplies start whittling down. It's taking a while. But you know who's getting it this cheap right now? The central banks. And who else has bought gold? Goldman Sachs. And who's buying up mining shares? And who's already bought up mining shares? George Soros. And what did George Soros say a few years ago? Gold is the ultimate bubble. And you know, the idiots, I'll call them the gold pumpers. They say, "Whoa, George Soros says it's the ultimate bubble. He doesn't know shit." You know, because he's saying, they were saying he thought it, he was saying, they interpreted it as he said gold was in a bubble. That's not how I interpret it. I interpreted it that he's being coy, and he was basically revealing it to us something. He actually reveals to us far more than Jim Rogers ever does. Soros. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm more used to dealing with that type of mentality, because I could read it. You know, people get mad at these type of people. I don't get mad at them. I think they're really good people, to tell you the truth. He's telling you flat out, gold will be the ultimate bubble. It's not exactly his words, but that's exactly what's going to happen. You know why? Because all these big guys can't even produce the freaking stuff now. Why? Because they're getting squeezed. So is gold going to be an essential commodity for the bankers to shore up all this debt? You're damn straight it is. You're damn straight. So, you know, I'm taking a personal vendetta against some of these bloggers out there that don't know shit. They don't know shit. Because, you know what? You know, if, say, for instance, somebody bought gold a few years ago, or a couple years ago, or silver, and they went up and it went down. You know, if they put all their money into it, it's stupid. I never say put all your money into something. You know, that's really high risk. This is always known as a high risk asset, especially silver. Very volatile. But it could be high reward too. So, you know, let me just put it into perspective too, because actually, you know, when they start this mines up again, it's going to have to be where the banks see it as a plain fact. Because, you know, what happened recently? They have all these big abandoned projects. You know, Barrick Gold abandoning most of its $8.5 mega project in the Chile-Argentine border on the Andes. You know, another giant out there, Kinro's, planning a project in Ecuador for 1.3 billion. So what are the banks going to have to do in the future after the banks got burned too? Because, you know, actually they're selling off stuff. Barrick is actually, all they're getting, what's going on too is when they do these write-downs, they're getting massive tax credits too. You know, they might get an actual credit. And that's helping them to pay down the loans too. But they might be selling equipment. You don't even know. But maybe selling it cheap. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing exactly. But I know what happens in the construction industry. But I know a lot of ways you can make something go under the worst circumstances. Because, like I said, you got to work every day past midnight for years on end. And it's that 1% that jumps you over the hurdle each time. That slight little sliver that makes the difference between success and failure. So I never worry about this kind of shit. And like if I'm tasked with it, I make it work. I know that. But in the case of Barrick, say now their credit rating on unsecured rating, their unsecured debt, it went from double BAA2 to BAA from BAA1. It got downgraded, right? Now, I'm not familiar with all this credit rating shit exactly. You know, it's either give you the money or not. That's why you want to deal with deep pockets individuals that are greedy, but you better produce for them because they'll get very mad and they'll take it out. They'll take it out personally. But, you know, I don't deal with these banks. But anyway, what's going to happen in the future if they need money? It's going to have to be established fact that gold is higher priced and it's going higher. In other words, they're not getting any more damn money if gold is even going to be $1,300 an ounce, or even $1,400. It's going to have to be like $1,600 an ounce and looking like it's going way up before these guys get money. And to get the gold out of the ground, it's going to take a couple years to get new stuff going. There's always going to be some gold coming out of the ground from existing mines, but that supply is not going to meet demand. And I know there's going to be people on the internet saying, oh, there's so much supply of gold on the earth. Get it out of the ground. Yeah, you know what? There's so many houses, too, because you know why? We got loads of trees and forests all over the place. Just make it into lumber, stick it together with some nails, because we got plenty of freaking iron ore everywhere. We can make nails. And it's done. Here, I wrote it down. Here, I thought it up in my head. It's almost like the guy that drew a picture and says, here, go make it out of metal or go make it out of brick. You know, that's why sometimes I don't even... These bloggers are pissing me off, too, because it's about as bad as the Office flakes. You know? The reality is the miner's in deep trouble, which is killing the supply. So, as to how much are they going to squeeze the miners... Wall Street, as much as they possibly can. But like I said, the way to fight back with Wall Street is this. Don't participate with it. Fuck them. Buy physical. Don't even use, you know, I mean, you got to use some electronic funds. You got to use some of this. You got to have some fiat paper. You don't buy 100% physical every last dime. But, you know, physical is a smart thing. I keep buying more physical. I don't give a shit. I do. So what? You know, I figured later on when the price goes up, a lot of these people that have been big naysayers now, they're going to be the emotional freaks later on. They're, you know, about it going up. They're going to change 180 degrees around. But anyway, you know, just want to comment more on this because it's a major decision. When people abandon a major project that's been in the works for years by experts. And, you know, you're talking about people that understand the commodities. You're not talking about bloggers. You're talking about people who have been in the industry for many years. You're talking about banks that don't give out money for nothing unless they're going to get something back on it. You're talking about when they make loans, they'll have all kinds of interest and penalties beyond the interest and other things that go on if they default on a loan. That's a big decision, man. When you throw down this kind of money, you're talking billions of dollars. You think these people are just so stupid that, you know, oh yeah, we figured, we just kind of figured in our head that gold was going to go up and we were going to make all this, we were going to have enough money to get back, you know, we're going to get enough money back on our capital expenditures, and in the long run that this project will be feasible. You think these people are that stupid? No, they're not that stupid. The bloggers that are that stupid. Both sides. The pumpers on one side and the naysayers on the other side. Both of them are freaking idiots to the max. I gotta say that. Getting tired of these armchair morons. Like I said, there's plenty of trees out there too. You gonna make a house out of it? Same thing. Same way of looking at it. So it's a major decision to abandon a project and do an asset write-down. When it's abandoned, it's not going to get started up again. And like I said, a lot of these upfront capitalized costs on surveying, geothermal engineering, impact studies, I don't know, environmental studies, EPA, permits definitely have a shelf. All these things have an engineering, all have a shelf life. And then once the project's abandoned, all these people go to other jobs. They were the laborers, and you lose the whole skilled labor force because they either became independent contractors or they went into a slightly different industry. It ain't easy to start up again. You know, it's not like mining has anything to do with hairdressing. You know, if like a hairdresser or something like that wants to open up a business and you want to have like, yo, there's not enough people out there to cut people's hair and do shit and all this kind of crap. Well, you can get a gazillion of them all trained inside of a couple months probably, right? And you can have, you know, so all you got to do is open up a, you know, have a chair and some minor equipment and they're all set because it's 90% service-orientated industry. There's no major capital upfront expenditure. See the difference? This takes years. This takes years. So also beware of what Jim Rogers says. I don't trust that guy. I don't trust him. You know, he says gold, silver will have a long, complicated bottom. I think it already has had a long, complicated bottom. It's not going to go up like this, though. It's going to do most of its gains at the bubble mania phase again. But I think there's going to be another bubble mania phase fake out before the real ultimate spike comes. But it all depends. It all depends on how fast it moves in 2014. It all depends. Anyway, over and out. I just thought I'd maybe throw a little more insight on this. And I can't say a lot of stuff because I know I could say some wild stories, man. I could say some wild stories. I could if I wanted to. I can't. I can't. So anyway, over and out.